Om Hrim Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskar. Welcome back to Yoga Answers. Today, we're going to start with a pretty straightforward question that I think seems to vex a lot of folks in the West about yoga. I've seen a lot of misinformation online and whatnot regarding what exactly is yoga. And the big thing that I think prevents a lot of folks in America from being willing to engage with yoga is either the belief that it's just an exercise system and they're not interested in that. They've got their own exercise routine, or they're just not down with, stretching out on a mat or whatever and doing these crazy poses. Or they have some kind of religious reservations because many people believe that yoga is a form of Hinduism, that it is a Hindu practice. And I have actually heard clergy members online say that when you are doing the physical asanas, the physical yogic practices, you are worshiping Hindu deities. That's just completely not true. That is inaccurate. And I am not here to decide for you whether or not yoga fits your faith. I'm not here to say yoga is right for Christians or wrong for Christians or right for Jews, Hebrews, Buddhists, people that are First Nation, Wiccan, atheist, agnostic. What I'm here to say and to share with you is that yoga is for humanity, and it is not connected to a religious belief system. So I'd like to talk about the term Hinduism real quickly, because we use that in America as a catch-all for the religions of the Indian subcontinent. And if we're going to understand yoga, we need to begin by understanding the incorrectness and invalidity of the term Hinduism. The term Hindu is a derivation of the word Indus, the Indus River Valley that runs on the western side of the Indian subcontinent. As conquerors came from the east, crossed the Indus River, to them, everything that they were conquering was Hindu. Okay? The people there did not call their belief system Hinduism. That is a term of the colonizer and the oppressor, and I don't like to use it. It's also not the correct term. What the ancient term for what people in India called their belief systems, plural, is Sanatana Dharma, the eternal path. Sometimes referred to as the eternal law, but it's the eternal path. Lifetime after lifetime for all humanity, it's always there, eternal and unchanging. Now, what is considered Sanatana Dharma generally are 5 overarching belief systems. 4 can be considered religions, the way we would think of a religion in the West, with temples and priests and rituals and things of that nature. And those are Brahmanism, Vaishnavism, and Shaivism, Smarta. And the 5th is a philosophy and set of practices known as yoga, which is utilized often by those who practice these religions. However, yoga is separate from the religions. In the same way that Jesus was a Jew and not a Christian, the Buddha was a yogi. He was not a Buddhist. Okay? He railed against Hinduism. Hinduism wasn't doing, or Sanatana Dharma, the official religions, right? Brahmanism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism. He wasn't getting what he needed out of that. The yogi teachers he had never reached enlightenment and couldn't guide him all the way. So he needed to go out on his own and discover enlightenment for himself, which is what all of us have to do. It's an inside job, and we all have to do it alone. But the techniques that he used to attain enlightenment are the techniques of yoga. Okay? And especially if we look at what was brought up into Tibet. Tibetan Buddhism is very much, and I know there's 4 different schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and they're different, but in general, the Buddhism that we see in Tibet is very much, it's yoga. There's a lot of yoga and tantra practices that are going on, right? But you wouldn't say Buddhism is a religion. It's widely agreed. No one worships the Buddha. They don't pray to the Buddha. They strive to achieve Buddhahood, which is the same way as a yogi does not worship Shiva, but tries to attain Shivahood, right? It's not a god to be worshipped, but a state to be attained. Okay. So it's important to understand that there are many, many forms of yoga. And maybe before you discount yoga altogether, take a look at a couple and maybe try some out and see if you might find one that works for you. Because what we see in America most often is the bending and stretching, and that is called hatha yoga. And that is meant to bring that male passive and female generative energies together in the body. Ha, tha, sun, moon, male, female, passive, generative life. So what we see in America and generally in the West as yoga began in the 15th century. So we're talking the 1400s. Okay, you with me? 1400 AD. Hatha yoga was given to humanity by a very great sage. However, yoga, the practice and the belief system and the philosophy and all of it, the first written accounts go back to 1500 BC, so in the Rig Veda and the earliest Upanishads. So they're 3,500 years old. So there's basically thousands of years of yogic practice and literature being passed down and refined before we ever get to the 1400s AD. And the only reason Hatha yoga, the bendy, stretchy poses, was invented was the first 2 branches of the 8 limbs of yoga in the Yoga Sutras, which came out in around 200 BC, are the yamas and niyamas, the 5 observances, kind of moral observances, and 5 abstentions. 5 things you should morally try to do, 5 things you should morally try to stay away from. And not everyone was able to do that. So they couldn't then move forward in the practice of yoga with the other steps. So Hatha yoga begins with what we have, the body. And there's no need in Hatha for the yama and the niyamas, the abstentions and the observations. You through you working with the body, you train the mind. And through using breathing techniques, you also learn to control the mind. Once you can slow the mind and control it and start coming towards meditative states, then the yamas and niyamas become easier to do in your daily life, and you can advance as the Yoga Sutras would recommend. In the Bhagavad Gita, um, Lord Krishna gives, he's talking about the Raja Yoga, the royal path of meditation. Sri Krishna gave us options. If you can't meditate, if it's not in your bag to meditate, if you just can't train your mind, then there's Jnana Yoga, Jnana, which is the yoga of self study, the yoga of wisdom. And that's reading scriptures and yoga philosophy and practicing what's called svajaya, which is self study, kind of writing things down and looking at your conduct throughout the day. And, maybe I got into an argument with somebody at the store and I got a little angrier than I wanted to. And I didn't act the way with compassion and humility. It was driven by my ego. And so in my svajaya, my self study, I can see that. And then I can say, okay, that's something I want to work on tomorrow. That's something I want to try to improve. So that is a form of jnana, self study, knowing the self as we are in the world. So that's a great form of yoga for those who are very intellectually minded. No asanas. I didn't mention a single pose, right? Intellectual. Now, what if you're not into intellectualism? What if that's not your bag and you don't want to sit around and read a bunch of books? Well, then we have bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. And there was a huge, huge bhakti movement in India. And a lot of bhakti practitioners are Vaishnava, or they worship Vishnu, Krishna. But that it doesn't have to be that way. You can be a Christian and be a bhakti. Okay, bhakti is devotion, and it is the practice of listening devotional music, singing devotional songs, or chanting devotional mantras, or visualizing an image in your heart of what you believe to be divine. And so you could be a Christian, right? And you can just view Jesus in your heart and welcome him into your heart and sing old Southern gospel tunes, you know what I mean? Or 90s R&B soul tunes. It doesn't matter. Anything that you feel and that is from your heart and you're singing directly to your God, that's devotion. That's bhakti. And there's no wrong way to do it. What if you can't do that, right? What if you don't even know if there's a God? And if there is a God, you don't want to have anything to do with him because you weren't really happy about earlier situations in your life where you had run-ins with church folk or whatever. Or maybe you're just an atheist or an agnostic and you're just not sure. Well, there's karma yoga, which is the yoga of selfless service. Just go do something for someone else without expecting anything in return. And what happens when we do that, right? Hold the door open for the old lady at the store, buy a breakfast burrito for the homeless guy in the park, right? Any little act of empathy and selfless service is us serving the divinity within all beings. It's us putting our ego aside for just a second, right? And making life about this other being, about making their life, their day, a little more manageable, a little less painful, right? And in serving them, we are the ones who are blessed. It's actually a karmic gift that little paying it forward and helping someone out and a little bit of service pays forward as positive karma for us, you know. So there are also other forms of yoga. Okay, there's Laya yoga, there's a lot. Okay, Kriya yoga, which is what I practice. There are many forms of yoga. And not everyone is for everybody. You find the one that works for you. Or maybe you just take some breathing practices, right? And maybe some concentration techniques that will lead you into meditation states. And then that's all you have to do with yoga. You just take the techniques and then you move on with your life. And the universe will sort the rest out. Okay? I am just here to invite you to this wonderful practice and set of practices. And yoga is really a lifestyle. It's not really, it's not what you do on the mat. It's how you live your life the rest of the day, once you've done your meditation or your hatha yoga or whatever. Well, how are you living the rest of the day? What are you doing to serve humanity? What are you doing to get closer to yourself and diminish your ego? These are the questions that yoga really is seeking to answer. So I hope I was able to answer some questions and not muddy the waters too much. I'm just trying to show you that yoga is not a religion, and that you can practice hatha yoga, the physical yoga, if you want, and that has nothing to do with worshiping Hindu gods or goddesses. You can practice devotional yoga, bhakti yoga, for any belief system, right, that you have, any sacred songs or hymns, right? All of that is devotional, and it doesn't matter what you consider to be the supreme being. But I also want to say that if you are receiving teachings from your priest, your pastor, your imam, whatever, and they are saying that yoga is bad for you, that yoga is not compatible with this faith, okay? I am not here to argue with that. And I am not here to dispute that. That is your faith and your belief system. And I honor that. And I am just here to help everyone understand that this ancient science of yoga does not have a religious basis. It is spiritual. It's absolutely spiritual. Yoga, union, the union of the soul with its creator, with God. Okay? That is the essence of all the work that we do in yoga. Even the bendies and the stretchies, the whole purpose of that is to be able to move forward in yoga. It has a spiritual purpose. There's nothing wrong with practicing it, just don't stop there. Keep moving forward. And if you're intellectual, you can practice jnana yoga, right? If you don't want to believe in anything, but you still want to get some benefits of yoga, some inner peace, karma yoga, right? Go buy a homeless person a meal, right? It's winter. Go to the army supply store, buy a wool blanket for $5 and go find somebody sitting in the rain, right? Think of the inner peace that you're going to have the moment you wrap up a fellow human being in a blanket. Instant. You will instantly feel better. Okay? And you will be uplifted. That's how yoga works. It's not magic. So, I thank you for coming, and I welcome you to this channel, and I hope that I've been a worthy servant in your quest for answers.